But Hugo, I really want to go back to the car because, of course, it includes a blue stuffie of the car. And people have been listening to this podcast or reading befores and afters, they will know I have this weird, terrible obsession with stuffies. And here is a blue 3D printed or sculpted car used on set to help with that shot of pushing Tom out of the C-17.
Welcome to the VFX Notes podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by Action VFX and ftrack. Action VFX has the best library of VFX stock footage, with over 5,500 high-quality elements. They are the best stock footage I ever come across, and I highly recommend them. And the new Free for Subscribers features allows you to instantly unlock over 1,000 free bonus assets for only $29 a month. Sign up at actionvfx.com today and start downloading. ftrack is an Academy Award-winning company specialized in project management, production tracking, and the creation of media review platforms for the creative industry. ftrack has recently released 2 new versions of its media review software. Check out ftrack Review for the new interface and even more accessible reviews. You can also try cineSync 5, the brand new version of cineSync, built from the ground up for the most secure, high-quality review sessions out there. You can try both products for free via the link on the description below. And now on to the show.
Hi everyone, welcome to this latest episode of VFX Notes. I'm Ian Fales from Befores and Afters, and as always I'm joined by Hugo Guerra from Hugo's Desk. Hi there Hugo, how you doing?
I'm very good, Ian. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I've just fallen out the back of a C-17 and have landed in the ocean. What about you?
And got hit by $1 million car, yeah. I'm very good, thank you. Yes, I've been traveling the world trying to find treasure, yes.
Well, let's hope you can bring some of that to Australia. Today we are talking about Uncharted, the film, but we're actually talking about a very specific sequence. I think you can work out what that sequence is. Before we dive into that, and also the link, of course, with the game Uncharted, the game series, we really want to say a quick thank you to our sponsors and to our Patreon supporters. Hugo, we really wouldn't be here without them, would we?
No, we wouldn't. No. Thank you so much to the sponsors. It really means a lot to us to have a sponsor and to have sponsors. And also, of course, the Patreons. Without them, we couldn't do the show, and they get a lot of perks, including the perk to get the episodes 3 days before everyone else. They can get bragging rights about that,
And yes, I was thinking maybe if we get more sponsors and Patreons, I can buy a new shirt that doesn't have my bite marks in it. Apologies, everybody. I don't know why I brought that up, but here we go.
Now everyone is just going to look at that the whole episode.
You can edit that out if you want. You
can cover it with your beard.
A quick reminder to please like and subscribe us on YouTube, on Hugo's Desk. That's going to really help us, grow the channel and get the word out. You can also review us and subscribe on various podcast networks, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. So just a quick mention of that as well. But yeah, we love our supporters. We love the feedback. Please keep the comments coming on YouTube and everywhere. I think Hugo replies to every single one of them. I'm getting a bit better at it, but Hugo is the man with that sort of thing.
I know, I need to stop doing that because it takes a long time. No, but yeah, I try my best. We love all the really, it's always such nice comments. People are always giving more information about the shots, and in fact, a lot of times we even get people that worked on the shots actually commenting, which is fantastic. I'm really so happy to know that people that have worked on these projects actually listen to the show as well,
Yeah. Well, let's jump into this sequence, which is the sequence in the back of the C-17. We'll talk about what actually happens there. But of course, the film and this part of the film, Hugo, is super closely related to what happens in Uncharted the game from Naughty Dog and Sony. Hugo, you're the gamer in this relationship. Tell everyone a little bit about the game and this sequence in particular.
Yeah, so I won't take too much of a time because we are here to talk about the visual effects, but This game is incredibly important for Sony. This series, Uncharted, came out on 2007, created by Amy Hennig, genius, amazing creator. She's created some of the best games in the world, and including all of the Uncharted games except 4. And Legacy of Kain, and she's amazing. The thing with this game is that this was a time in 2007 where PlayStation 3 was out, and gaming was very much like either a shooter or it was an RPG, which was a role-playing game, or a sports games. And I think Sony and Naughty Dog and Amy Hennig really found here something which was a cinematic experience. And I know it's funny because now we're talking about the film that got inspired by a game that was cinematic and filmic. So Uncharted was that kind of type of adventure that while playing it, you felt like you were playing a film. It felt like you were in a movie, because the whole thing was like a movie. It was shot like a movie, with framing like a movie, with lenses like a movie. Also, at the time, the CG was really on par with nothing else. It would look amazing as well. And it was all about set pieces. The whole game is set pieces, including the fact that the first game and the second game especially are very much a flashback game. You're going backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, just like you see on the film as well, where you start with something that will happen very later in the film. That happens also in Uncharted 2. In Uncharted 2, you start the game on something that will happen later in the game. And so I think that's why it's so important, because it brings that cinematic feeling to a player. They were playing a film. And obviously Uncharted was kind of the response from Sony to Tomb Raider, which Tomb Raider on essence was something inspired by Indiana Jones. So it's like a trio of things, Indiana Jones, Tomb Raider, Uncharted. And the funny thing is that Indiana Jones influenced Tomb Raider, and then Tomb Raider influenced Uncharted, and then ended up like the rebooted Tomb Raider games are now influenced by Uncharted. So it's really funny how things are going. But yeah, you're right. This sequence is pretty much straight out of 2 games. It's this entire cargo sequence. So there is an actual cargo sequence on Uncharted 3, where the cargo plane blows up. He's actually climbing the boxes, just like the film, exactly like the film. No Mercedes SL though, but just like the film. And there is also like other nods to Uncharted 2, where he wakes up on a very dangerous, precarious situation, like on the film, where he wakes up on the middle of the box. But on Uncharted 2, he wakes up on a train that is on a cliffhanger to fall from a cliff on a snowy mountain. So there's a lot of... it's funny looking at this film. We're not going to talk about other parts of the film, but the film actually has multiple sections from multiple games. Just a little small note to, for example, the auction heist that you see on the film. That's actually from an auction heist that happens on Uncharted 4. And then the cargo plane is from Uncharted 3. And then him waking up on a precarious thing is on Uncharted 2. Then, of course, the one-eyed bad guy at the end of the film on the post-credits scene, that's the bad guy of the first Uncharted game. So you have all these little things that glue to the game. And I've... When I was watching the film, I noticed all of these, of course, because I'm a huge fan of this.
I want to butt in there and say, if anyone needs some Uncharted history lessons or deep dives, you know where to come now. It's Hugo Guerra, I have to say. Hugo,
I'm gonna shut up now, but I really advise everyone to go and play these games, because these games, if anything, for people that don't play games, they're actually really easy to get into. They're really easy to play, and because you can make them really easy if you want to on settings. And Naughty Dog has been known by their accessibility options, and so the game can become very accessible even to people that have not experienced games. And I really recommend, because it's a huge cinematic opera, an amazing script from Amy. Like, the script is really good for all 3 games, and then of course the 4th, which she was not involved, but she started it. And so I really recommend people go and play the games, because they are, I think they're the best game series of all times. Like it's really good. Like for PlayStation, you know.
Yeah, and you mentioned Amy there. I was very lucky to be the chair of the featured sessions at SIGGRAPH last year, which ended up being a virtual SIGGRAPH. And Amy was one of our keynote speakers.
Yeah.
And she did this really great interview where she talked about her past in game production and writing and directing, you know, and creating these games. But then the path forward, which she feels is very much about interactivity. Now, people will say, well, games are already interactive, you know, they're real time and whatnot. But it's almost like what you were saying at the beginning, Hugo, which is this felt like you were in a film.
Yeah.
And part of the storytelling. And Hugo, I think Amy, who's now the president of Skydance New Media, I mean, that's her modus operandi going forward, is to make these games hugely interactive, cinematic. And, you know, that word convergence got used for a long time with games and films.
Yeah.
I think that's what Amy really wants to do. You can actually watch that interview with Amy on the SIGGRAPH YouTube page. And I really recommend it.
She's fantastic, and she is really the pioneer of all of this, because this game series really pioneered all of that. And Naughty Dog in particular is by far, it's considered the most successful video games company in the history, you know, because of Uncharted and also because of The Last of Us, which is considered the best game of all times from a lot of venues. And so they are the most cinematic game studio ever. They are really cinematic. You're literally playing a film. And I feel like a lot of people throw that word around. Oh, you're playing a cinema film. You're playing a film. You're playing a film. This is really well made. Like, you know, the script writing is on point. The acting is amazing. It's all done, of course, on a mocap studio. The actors also that they bring in, like Nolan North and like all these people that come into the game, they're really good actors. And so this, I think, was the first time where we saw a game that didn't have poor acting, a game that didn't have poor voiceover, you know, a game that was polished. Like the whole thing was so polished that even the soundtrack was like this orchestration, momentous soundtrack, you know, like an Indiana Jones film. So I really have to shout out to Amy and to Naughty Dog for opening the floodgates for the amazing games we have today. I really feel that they are a huge influence for how the games industry has become now a multi-billion-dollar entertainment giant, with a lot of companies making games like Uncharted as well. You know, it all starts here. I feel like, of course, it doesn't start in Uncharted, but it kind of cemented everything that was coming before. You know.
But it's interesting because it brings up another point, which is that the success of these big games, Hugo, I feel like film studios want to use the success of these games to turn into successful films. There's this long history, of course, of video games becoming films, and probably vice versa to some degree. It felt like Uncharted, of course, was super suitable for a film. It has the film version, which ultimately was directed by Ruben Fleischer, who did Venom, which I really actually love, the first Venom.
Yeah, that's right.
It had a bit of a troubled history. I don't think we need to repeat the troubled history of Uncharted and the change in directors and actors. But ultimately, the film was hugely successful. I think perhaps surprising many, right? Like it's made, I think, $400 million at the box office. It's probably an expensive film to make, sure.
Yeah.
But, you know, here's Tom Holland, Mark Wahlberg, pretty much the hot things in acting right now still. I mean, I guess, Hugo, people thought this was going to be a home run. When they watched the film and there were some initial reviews, people were like, eh. But the film made a lot of money. So, I don't know, maybe Sony's having the last laugh here.
I think they are actually. And an important thing as well with this, I agree with everything you said, of course, but an important thing with this is about the Sony Studios thing, because this is really, I don't know if you noticed, like this big logo opening credit, like the Marvel opening credit at the beginning of the film, where you see a bunch of games being played on the reflection of the letters of Sony images. Because right now, this is actually the floodgate for that. Like, this is the first film that they're creating on that umbrella of Sony Sony Game Studios, the PlayStation Studios. I think it's called PlayStation Studios, I believe. And because, right now, Naughty Dog is also in bed with HBO to do Last of Us. They're also making Ghost of Tsushima as well. They're also making I'm not going to go through the list, but there's a bunch of God of War as well. There's a bunch of really hot properties from Sony that are now being converted to film through this studio. And I think Sony is just seeing an opportunity here, not to become I'm not saying that they're going to become a contender against Marvel or against Disney, but they are seeing an opportunity here to leverage all their IPs, because Sony PlayStation has been going on since 99. They have a 25-year history now with multiple franchises, multiple IPs. Why not use that legacy? I feel like it makes perfect sense. And yes, you're right. They had the last laugh. The film was criticized at the time because the main actor, Tom Holland, does not look like Nathan Drake on the game. And also because Sully is much older, and everyone criticized the acting choices, But at the end of the day, I actually thought it was a great choice. I thought the film was funny. It was fresh. I thought the film it wasn't anything to, it's not an award-winning film, but it was entertaining. It was actually I had a really good time watching the film. It had a lot of nods to the game. I really enjoyed that, because I'm a big fan of the game. And so I felt that it was something fresh in the middle of all the Marvel and Star Wars stuff. It was nice to see something completely different, and actually having a piece of that Indiana Jones that we never get, because Indiana Jones has been dormant for so long. I think this is going to be the closest we're going to get to it, Yeah. So I thought it was interesting in that sense.
I enjoyed it too as a non-gamer. When I say non-gamer, by the way, it doesn't mean I don't like games. I just have never been the Hugo Guerra level of gaming.
What do you mean? You mean like the thousands of games on my shelves there?
But I tell you something, as an outside observer and in the film's marketing, was they never made a big thing of Tom Holland needing to be Nathan Drake-like in this film, except they totally utilized the very, very, very powerful physicality of Tom Holland in terms of stunts, right? That's what they do when they promote Spider-Man. Clearly, Tom Holland has stunt performers and stunt doubles, but he's often portrayed as doing all these pieces of wire work. In this particular sequence that we're mainly talking about, Hugo, that's exactly what they did here. Showing Tom Holland on wires attached to these robots, which we'll mention. I think that just as a general thing about why people went to the cinema in the first place was that they really felt like there was something about Tom Holland and his physicality and abilities that they were going to enjoy just in terms of watching the film. What do you think?
It's funny what you're saying, because I actually thought they were really smart there, because for anyone that have not played the game, there is really no obligation to play the game. The film explains everything. It's really it gives you the whole story. It shows you new characters. So anyone that has never heard of Uncharted won't really have an issue. They will fully understand the whole thing. And I thought that in the past we've had other game adaptations that were depending too much in the knowledge of the game. I think that Sony was quite smart here not to have that crutch on the film where people would have to know what they are looking at. But on the other hand, there is just enough nods to the game to make all the gamers happy, because the people that played the game, they were going to go anywhere. They would, people like me, we were going to go and watch it anywhere. Even if we were pissed about it or not happy with it, we were going to go and see just to see how bad it was or how good it was. And so they knew those people already bought the ticket. And so they tried to find the other audience, which in this case, it is right hot out of Spider-Man. Tom Holland is a hot property right now. You know, it was really Spider-Man came out like just the month before Uncharted, wasn't it? I think something like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I noticed that on the cinema. I went to the cinema expecting to be, you know, on an empty theater, watching it on the middle of the week, and it was packed. It was packed with teenagers. Packed.
Yeah.
And there was a particular moment on the film, there was a lot of noise on the audience when, you know, Tom Holland is doing all these muscle bits and everything. So the whole thing, you can really see that he's a magnet of people to come in. He really has that Hollywood star thing now, like where people actually come in to watch him. They're not really, I don't care what he's doing. It's almost like that kind of thing with Tom Cruise and Will Smith back in the day, where people would just go and see the new Tom Cruise film.
Yeah,
I feel
back
like
in
Tom
the day,
Holland is.
Don't you mean this past month, Hugo?
Yeah, but he's the last. He's the last one. Tom Cruise is the last one. No, yeah. I feel like you're right on the money there. Like they were really smart on not making it too gamified, but also to make it interesting enough to and getting the. And you know, because originally Mark Wahlberg was supposed to be the character that Tom plays. But the film was in production for so long that he kind of became too old for it. But I think it's cool that it happened anyway.
I think it's cool it happened anyway.
Yeah.
So, on this sequence, Hugo, I can imagine, just pretend if they came up with this C-17 cargo plane sequence without having the game reference. I can imagine that's like both a visual effects producer and supervisor's dream kind of sequence, but also like their worst nightmare, because if they were filming with Tom Cruise would be like, we've got to film this for real, but then when you can't film so much of it for real, there's this risk that it might look fake, right, depending on how you do the jumping out, the CG plane, the CG environment, the crates. I feel like, as people will see with the background material that Hugo will show and also what we'll talk about, they arrived at a really interesting level of real stuff with stunts, blue screen photography, and of course a whole lot of great CG work from DNEG and digital visual effects work. What do you think generally about the visual effects of the whole sequence, Hugo?
Yeah, so I think this sequence is stunning. It's definitely the highlight of the film. I know the film has a lot of the VFX shots, but this is really impressive and really special. And it was already special on the game. When you play this on the game, it's mind blowing. You're like, "Oh my god, this is the best sequence I've ever played." And this, it's funny that they even show it twice on the film. Like it is, they really like putting it out. But yeah, I know what you mean. It has a realistic look, and I think that has to do with the fact that they were really smart. They shot it outdoors, so they could leverage the lighting, the real lighting, with the harsh shadows and the contrast ratio. But obviously, it becomes a bit dangerous because you're depending on the sun, and the sun could move, and obviously you have some problems with continuity. But the shot was also short, so I think they could get away with it for shooting it in several days. I think that's my takeaway, that it looks really interesting, intense, and realistic. I think the fact that it was shot outdoors, I think that's why. And the fact that they had the props there, that's why it made it so realistic. Obviously, we're going to talk about the fact that there's a gigantic section of it which is digital, of course. But the handovers between those digitals and those real shots is really what interested me when I watched these breakdowns.
Yeah.
It really is not just surprising, but so well crafted. I mean, it's seamless, because this entire thing is almost a single shot. It's not a single shot, but it is very much a long take shot. It's very long, very wide. So shot with really wide lenses. Most of the shots are like 16 millimeters, super wides on an Alexa Mini. I thought it picked up what the game had and made it actually even better than the game sequence. I thought DNEG did an amazing job here.
Yeah, and we should give a shout out to the production VFX soup, who is Chaz Jarrett. Really, really cool guy, visual effects supervisor, who I wanted to make specific mention of these robot arms that we use during filming, which are these KUKA. You'll see them orange arms that, can effectively be motion controlled to perform the same behavior over again and, hold heavy things like prop crates and probably hold actors too. But the reason I say that in the same breath as Chaz Jarrett is that Chaz has sort of like consistently used these over a couple of films, including Sherlock Holmes 2, I think it's called Game of Shadows, for that sequence where it's a waterfall sequence with Robert Downey Jr. And then Framestore, which did that work previously for Sherlock Holmes 2, has kind of gone back to these robotic arms a couple of times. Obviously, this is a DNEG sequence, but I feel like Chaz is like, bring out the robot arms, That's kind of... I'm not sure he ever said that, but I'm kind of guessing he might have said something like that.
Yeah, these are actually from car manufacturing, isn't it? They're from car usually used in car manufacturing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's awesome as well because it gives a lot of tactile feeling to the scene because obviously Tom Holland is actually on a box and the box is like moving around, and even though they've replaced most of it digitally on some shots, but it's really funny when you look at the behind the scenes where the cameraman is also like attached to the boxes as well with a harness and with like a helmet to protect himself, and he's like they're moving around as well because the whole thing is like handheld almost. So it's really it comes to like really cool behind the scenes material because it looks absolutely stunning, like the way that they shot it. But I feel the handheld. Yeah, I forgot to mention like the handheld feeling to the scene as well. It's really why it makes it so powerful and so interesting and so intimate as well, because you are right there in there with a 16mm right next to him while this thing is happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So. The physicalness that I keep mentioning is something I take away from this sequence, even though it's a heavily digital visual effects sequence. And that goes not just for the robot arms, but for the wire work.
Yeah.
And I think you might have even just said it then, Hugo. It feels like sometimes the wire work isn't actually retained in the shot, but it informs the shot. Yeah. Meaning they'll try and get parts of the, sequence with Tom or the other actors or stunt doubles with wire work against blue screen to give them what it would feel like to shake them around or for them to fall or to be hit by wind machines. And maybe they'll retain Tom's head, or maybe they'll just use it to go, oh, that's kind of what the body looks like flailing around. Let's make sure when we do our digi-double animation, we matchmate that or also just, follow that look and feel. It just gave the sequence a bit more of physicality, I felt.
Yeah, and also, if you think about it, don't want to disrespect the amazing animation team of DNEG, but it would have been a lot harder to hand animate that. Yes. First of all, because you were not really gonna mocap that. That's not gonna happen. So you were gonna end up doing hand animation. So I actually think having the actual shoot there with Tom Holland is really beneficial here. And yes, if you go frame by frame, as I did, like I just went frame by frame and just checked, it's really funny. Even, for example, when he gets hit by the car, we'll talk about the car in a minute.
I love that.
Even when he gets hit by the car, you notice that on some frames it's a match, and then some other frames is not. There's like one leg that goes a bit more to the front, or one arm that goes a bit more to this side, or the head is slightly turned to the side. So obviously there was a lot of tinkering and the need for you to jump from digital to real, real to digital, digital to real. Like there's like a switch between shots all the time. But in practice, you kind of had to do the digital version on most shots for the sheer fact that such windy conditions would need so much wind on the cloth of his clothing, and also on the necklace, and also on the hair, of course. And as much as you can have wind machines on set, I mean, you're never going to replicate falling down to your death from a plane, so because you get this kind of strong wind on your mouth, on your cheeks, on the clothing, the whole thing gets stuck to your body. You really need to do that on CG. There's no other way. Like you're not gonna, even the boxes which were real, they ended up having to do a simulation of the netting and the simulation of the cloths and the buckles in CG anyway, because it didn't look like it was falling down. It looked like it was on a parking lot on the back lot, So I think it informs the CG, but it's absolutely necessary to then build all these simulations. It's like the ultimate reference. I feel it's really well made,
Yeah. That's a really interesting point. The sequence is absurd. Let's talk about that. He's able to jump back up while falling these crates. I mean, but here's the point. You kind of believe it because you kind of knew that Tom Holland or stunt double was performing the stunt, even if it was replaced a lot. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's so absurd, but because we've bought that he is there in the sequence, I feel like you can buy some of that outside of the plane stuff. But Hugo, I really want to go back to the car because, of course, it includes a blue stuffie of the car. And if people have been listening to this podcast or reading befores and afters, they will know I have this weird, terrible obsession with stuffies. And here is a blue 3D printed or sculpted car used on set to help with that shot of pushing Tom out of the C-17.
Have you asked them for it? Because you could make it as a shelf on your house, Have you asked for the...
I went to the German studio and stole it, basically, No.
Hey, there are actually two of them because you have the amazing stuff that hits him, but then they actually also build an entire full car in blue. Like a replica of the Mercedes, so that he and Chloe can be having a chat while they're falling. Like they're literally, he goes out of the car and starts talking with her like while they're falling in this car. Like, man, everything you need to kind of leave your brain out of the cinema to watch this sequence, but it's really fun as hell. But the stuffy, man, I'm sure your eyes lighted up when you saw that. It's funny as hell. It's also so hilarious, but also so necessary because he had to hit something, right? I mean, I guess it was actually really well thought out, because that sequence actually, when he gets hit by the car, especially when he says crap, which is, by the way, the catchphrase of the game. He says crap all the time on the game.
Right.
That's actually why he says crap so many times on the film. So when he gets hit by that thing, you actually notice on the breakdowns that they've used most of it, actually. They've of course replaced it in CG, but it matches very closely to the performance of Tom. Yes. Obviously, it's a replacement, just his head.
Why wouldn't they?
But his performance is really cool. If you look at just the plate, when he gets hit by that car, he really goes for it, doesn't he? Like, he really hits it, like his head, like, boom. He's good at this. He's good at stunts. I thought it was great.
I love it. I think yes, the takeovers that you've already talked about were fantastic, based on photogrammetry 3D scans of the actors, I believe, done by Clear Angle. Also facilitated, I mean, these takeovers done by DNEG is what we're talking about. Yep. Facilitated by what must have been some great pre-planning. Now, yes, they've got the game sequence to use as effectively previs, but obviously previs was... Yeah, previs would have been done for this sequence. And because as it kind of plays a bit like a one-er, previs is critical for working out, okay, now we're close on Chloe and Nathan. So I think we should shout out those sort of aspects of the production, not just stunts and the final visual effects work, but sort of all that prep stuff that happens to make for good camera angles, and also great digidoubles.
Yeah, because I'm so glad you're shouting out that, because the clever thing about this is it's really difficult to organize this. That's the thing, because you need to constantly know where you're going to swap to digital and when you actually going to film something. And they do that a lot. Like when he gets, like, just to go a little short rundown, he gets hit by the car, that's kind of physical, and then replaced when he kind of flies out of the window. Of course, that's a full CG double. But then the funny thing is when he then lands on the car, it's all full digital, but then the landing on the car section when he's talking with Chloe, that's actually a plate that they shot for real. So that means that they had to go from the hitting by the car on the airplane, goes to digital, goes all the way digital, all the way down, and then it kind of dissolves, and I'm oversimplifying it, of course, dissolves and morphs into the real shot of them on top of the car having a chat. And then Chloe jumps again, that becomes digital again, and then he jumps again, all digital, digital, digital. Then he gets held by Chloe on the box, that's digital. But then when they finally go to the second box, they actually land on top of the box and kind of rest a bit. And on that moment, that's again a plate again. So you have all these really cool actual plates shot on the backlog that just are little pieces of the puzzle of this entire sequence. And I found that really fascinating to see, and stellar work, because it's seamless. Like you never really know which one until you see the breakdown. Like it's all kind of mixed. You assume, of course, because certain things are too dangerous to be filmed. But it's a crazy sequence. My God, it's a really crazy sequence.
Can we talk about one other thing as well, which is I wish I had kept account, and I have not done this, but I wish I had, of the number of C-17s or Globe Masters or big Boeing planes or whatever these military planes are in these films that clearly needed to have a digital version as well. Yep. There's this one, Infinite, another DNEG production. There's probably a couple of Fast and Furious films. Some of those are DNEG productions as well. I am just wondering, and please can someone answer this in the comments, how many C-17s has DNEG done in the past 5 years? And how many times has someone else worked on a C-17? And are the models shared? Are they not? I always sort of try and ask that in interviews. And I think people are, they're not really want to answer because... Yeah. Anyway, for reasons. But have you noticed that, Hugo? Like, the C-17 is the plane of choice in all these big fantasy, sci-fi, adventure films.
We can ask DNEG to make a C-17 showreel of just C-17. I'm joking now, but back in the day when I was still at the mill, we used to have a stadium showreel because we did so many stadiums because of commercials. Exactly. We would have a showreel of just stadiums, and they should do a C-17 showreel. I would watch it. I thought it would, with all the turntables, all the different versions, all the shots that they made.
Because I bet there are tiny differences where the director or VFX group's gone, no, I think we need, like, they've got a slightly futuristic version because they're like a private enterprise. They're not actually the military, so put the engines on this way. It's Rolls-Royce engines. Oh no, these are GE. I don't know. Like, I think this conversation happens inside DNEG and other places. I want to be in that conversation, Hugo. That's how obsessed I am with these different C-17s. Sorry.
Now this sequence is amazing, and I was quite impressed as well that shout out to the whole team, the stunt crew, and also Tom Holland for good spirit. he's really going for it. And of course, second unit director Scott Roger, which is also the stunt coordinator, he's amazing. He did an amazing job with his team here, and it's also like I found it fascinating that they shot this in 5 weeks. I was quite surprised. Like 5 weeks is not a long time, and I'm sure that this was very complicated to film. But no, this thing is really impressive.
Yeah. I wondered whether a new version of Uncharted, the game, might come out that like ups the ante, on this on a similar type of sequence, or actually replicates what the film did. But
I'm really looking forward to that because there is obviously going to be a sequel. obviously. You see it at the end on the post-credit scene where you actually have Sully now, Mark Wahlberg now has the mustache, he has the cigar, and he has the big gun. Exactly, and even the shirt of the game. So he has exactly... It's almost like Sony listened to all the noise that was made on Twitter and then made that shot just to appease them. I'm not saying that happened, but that's what it looks like. Because he spent the whole film with not having the look of Sully. I'm sure we're going to have sequels. The games, by the way, especially Uncharted 4 and 2, has even more crazy stuff happening on the shots. On Uncharted 4, for example, there's a fight scene inside a burning, old boat. Like the old boats you see at the end of this film. The whole boat is burning around them, and they're actually having a fight while this thing is burning around them. Is a beautiful sequence on Uncharted 4. I'm sure that will end up on the film someday. You just have to go and take a pic.
Is there a C-17 in that boat sequence, Hugo?
No. but funnily enough, maybe I'm wrong, but I do believe it's a C-17 on the game, on Uncharted 3, that he blows up. I need to go and check. I'm sure it is.
D-Egg is set if they...
It's an obsession, you're right. I never noticed this obsession. Isn't there a C-17 on Kong as well? I think there is one as well. There probably is on Kong. I think so.
Yes, I'm pretty sure there is. And I'm pretty sure ILM and Weather Effects and DNEG and all of them have a C-17
I can see the future. We're going to do an episode about C-17s, aren't we? episode 7. Oh, no, we can't do episode 17 anymore. Ah, damn it. We lost the trick here. We should have done episode 17.
Very good. Well, I think, Hugo, we've shown that we love the game and we love the sequence. And we can't wait to see more C-17s. So it's been really fun chatting about Uncharted with you. Thank you, Hugo. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. See you all, everyone. Bye.
Bye.